Hi everyone, it's Rachel here from the Shades of Orange. Today I'm here to do my January wrap-up. I felt like January was a bit of a slumpy reading month for me. I just felt very distracted and I felt like I wasn't reading a whole lot. However, between audiobooks and some graphic novels, I ended up reading a total of 8 books, so clearly it wasn't that bad. I'll just jump right in and tell you what I read. Now, the first 3 books I read were all part of a manga series called Nana. This is about 2 young women in their early 20s who are both named Nana, who basically meet each other, end up moving in together in Tokyo, and it's really a coming-of-age story talking about friendship and family, but primarily relationships. I watched this show when it was an anime years back when I was a teenager and really enjoyed it, so I kind of wanted to pick it up again and see where the story was going to go. I feel like I might be a bit too old for this story now. I don't read a lot of that more comical slice of life manga usually, and this is definitely a younger story that's filled with kind of humor, and the characters are really immature in a lot of ways and the relationships are immature, but in some ways I still related to it at times, so it was still fun. I'm not sure if I'll continue on past this 3rd volume. After that, I reread, or rather re-listened to, the audiobook of Fangirl by Rowell. I read this over a year ago and was just really craving picking it up. I think most people know the story. It's about a socially anxious young woman who goes to university, and again, that's really a story about friendship and family, and again, kind of a coming-of-age story that deals with relationships, but really addresses kind of coming to age in a modern world with the internet and fan fiction, and it's so well done. Now, I think this might be my personal favorite Rowell story. I've now read all of her books, and I just think it just hit me on such a personal level. In some ways, Eleanor and Park may be a more perfect story, but this one just really spoke to me. I related to the situations Kath was in so much, related to issues with her family and friends and some of the issues kind of around drinking and university, and wow, just loved it. It was a 4.5 star reread for me. Just still really enjoy it. I don't know, it just was awesome. It's really, Rowell is just at her best in that one. It's amazing. Now, after that, I read a book that was part of my Booktube Recommends project. This was recommended to me by Andi at Estellasrevenge, and that book was The Sparrow by Doria Russell. This is a very classic, popular book that's somewhat science fiction, but in a lot of ways it's more of a story of humanity rather than science. It's about a group of Jesuit explorers who go in search of these aliens on another planet, and basically the story of what happens to them. Now, the story is told over 2 perspectives. The first is years in the future when only one survivor comes back, and he's basically on trial trying to figure out what actually happened and how this mission went wrong. And the other perspective goes back in time and really follows the steps about how these people came to be on this mission and what happened over the course of meeting these aliens. This is such a beloved book. I know so many people who say that this is one of their favorite books, so I was very intrigued to read it. And while I thought it was a very good story, it wasn't the amazing 5-star read that I was hoping it would be. I just don't know if it's my type of book, but still very interesting, very well done, and I can see why other people love it so much because it's a very profound story, and like I said, it talks more about the humanity rather than the science. So I don't think you have to like science fiction in order to really enjoy The Sparrow. After that, I listened to the audiobook of Landline by Rowell. You already heard me gush about Fangirl, but unfortunately, Landline very much let me down. I find that, for me personally, I think Rowell excels at young adult. Her young adult stories are honest and relatable, and just they feel so deep, but when you take her writing and put it into adult fiction, it comes across as kind of boring chick lit, and I don't know why. I feel like when you put it in a young adult context, her stories are so much more profound, but I just found Landline, the characters, while I normally love her characters, they did feel flat and underdeveloped to me. The main character in Landline is named Georgie McCool of all things, and she works as a TV producer, and I just found her character just to be so unrelatable. I would so much have rather if Rainbow Rowell had taken it down a notch and made her a lawyer, made her someone who is, yeah, just relatable to the more common person. It just kind of felt over the top. In terms of, honestly, like as a piece of kind of chick lit contemporary, it was a very good story. But I went into it with such high expectations because I know Rainbow Rowell can write such incredible stories. So I only ended up giving this book a 3 stars out of 5. It was alright, but I just know she can do so much better than that. Now after that, I read a collection of short stories by Sherman Alexie. Most of you probably know Sherman Alexie from his young adult book, which is the absolutely true story of a part-time Indian, which I read previously and really loved, gave that one 5 stars. So I was really anxious to read more of Sherman Alexie's work. I was kind of hoping he could be one of my new favorite authors if I read further into his collection of work. But I wasn't overly impressed by this collection. I don't read a lot of short stories, so partially it may be that it's not my favorite type of story to read. I do prefer novels over short stories, but I enjoyed the first story in this collection, and then my opinion of the collection went down from there. The very first story, Search Engine, is very well done. It was exactly what I love about Sherman Alexie's writing. It's full of humor, and at the same time it's incredibly honest. I just did not like the rest of his story collection. This collection was made right after 9/11, and so the stories are full of themes of terrorism and fear, and just, I didn't connect with them. It really dated the story to a time when, you know, I found the Americans are reacting so much to the fear of what happened that that whole culture of fear is just written into his writing, and I just really didn't connect with that very well, and unfortunately I feel like it really dates the book to timestamp that period, which in some ways is interesting, but it's not something I really prefer to read. I was also very surprised how highly sexualized and violent his stories were. I don't consider myself to be a prude, but I just felt like it was unnecessarily graphic at times, and it just really did take away from the stories for me. The last book I read was quite a bit different than what I normally read, and that was a piece of nonfiction called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And she is the COO of Facebook. She previously did a TED Talk all about how women need to lean into the table at work and really be part of the conversation, encouraging women to pursue those high, top paying positions in corporations and not just leave them for the men. And her talk basically inspired this book. I haven't actually seen the TED Talk, but I was very curious to check out the book. I am very lucky. I work in a great workplace that I don't really feel like my gender holds me back in any way. I feel like my voice is listened to, but it was still a really interesting conversation. I think particularly Sheryl is really speaking to women who will or are currently working mothers. She definitely does a great job to acknowledge stay-at-home mothers or single women, and talks about how they should really be leaning in as well, and just acknowledging that we really have fought as women to have the right to choose, and that there's no wrong choice to make. If it's what you want, then there's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home mom, which I thought she did a really good job of kind of navigating that tricky situation that, without kind of starting any mommy wars. But honestly, the book is targeted to those working mothers, and I think working mothers will get the most out of this book. It talks a lot about balancing chores and life and family responsibilities. I thought that she was very, well-spoken, well thought out, and tended to agree with most of what she was saying. I listened to this as an audiobook, which wasn't narrated by her, but was still very great to listen to. I could see myself going back to read this later in life. I don't have children now, but definitely later down the road when I'm trying to figure out that balance of work and life. I'm sure I'll be coming back to this and finding additional resources in there. But, very, very good resource. I think any woman who, like I said, even if you are considering how your work and life is going to mesh in the future, it's a very, thought-provoking book to read, and, very well thought out. Highly recommend it. If that's something you think you might like, it's definitely worth checking out. Keep in mind that she is a very privileged woman, and I know some people's complaint is that she wasn't entirely relatable. I felt she did a good job of acknowledging that she came from a life of privilege, but at the same time, it's easier to say you know, it's okay to have a nanny or this or that, but you know, as someone, you know, in a more middle class, you're not necessarily going to have the resources to have the best childcare and the best resources, and to you know, you just don't always have all the options that she had, and so it kind of makes it hard to take her advice when her solutions don't necessarily apply to the average earning woman. So that's everything I read in January. I'm really looking forward to the books I'm reading in February. I'm already partway through quite a few books, and I just know February is going to be an awesome reading month because I'm loving everything I'm reading so far, and I'm really looking forward to telling you more about them. So talk to you again soon. Thanks. Goodbye.